Hey fellow Alternatifiers, today I brought you another fascinating and quite controversial alternate history idea. Ever felt that chill when you ponder history's razor's edge? Those moments where a single breath, a single step, could unravel everything we know? We fixate on the grand narratives, the titans of history, but what about the unseen threads, the near misses? Today we're staring into that abyss. What if Adolf Hitler, the man whose name echoes with unimaginable darkness, had perished not in a bunker, but in the mud and blood of World War I? Imagine a world spared the swastika's shadow, the camps, the global inferno. A beautiful thought, isn't it? But history, my friends, is rarely simple, and this alternate path might hold its own chilling secrets. We're not just changing one life. We're potentially rewriting the soul of a century. The ripple effects, the unforeseen monsters, the lost possibilities. Buckle up, because we're about to navigate a phantom timeline, a ghost of the 20th century that never was. Close your eyes. Picture the Western Front, a landscape of mud, wire, and despair. It's October 1916. The Somme grinds on, a meat grinder chewing up a generation. A young Austrian corporal, Adolf Hitler, serves as a dispatch runner, a perilous job dodging death daily. He's a survivor marked by fate. But in this divergent reality, fate turns a colder eye. Not another near miss, not another miraculous escape. A random shell, a sniper's unseen bullet finds its mark. In the chaos, just another casualty among millions. Adolf Hitler falls, his future extinguished before it could ignite the world. A life ends. A different history begins. To grasp the void left by Hitler, we must first feel the exhaustion of 1918. World War I is bleeding Europe dry. Empires are crumbling. Germany, battered and starved, teeters on the brink of collapse. The Kaiser's reign is a fading echo. Revolution hangs heavy in the air. Then comes Versailles. Not just a treaty, but a wound. Humiliation, crippling reparations, lost territory. A fertile ground for resentment, for anger, for the desperate search for a scapegoat. In our history, Hitler weaponized this pain. Without him, who steps into that vacuum of despair? Let's be clear. Hitler's absence doesn't conjure a utopia. The Weimar Republic remains a ship tossed on a stormy sea. Hyperinflation devours savings, turning wheelbarrows of cash into worthless paper. Political factions clash violently in the streets. The scars of war run deep. The desire for vengeance, for a return to perceived glory, still simmers, but the form of that anger is crucial. Without Hitler's unique venomous blend of nationalism, racial hatred, and mesmerizing oratory, the National Socialists might wither. Just another angry voice in a crowded, desperate choir. His personal magnetism, his chilling conviction, his almost supernatural ability to channel collective rage, these were the dark engines of Nazism. Without that singular, twisted genius, the disparate threads of German extremism might never weave into such a terrifyingly powerful rope. So, if not Hitler, then who? The stage is set for other players. Perhaps a stern, traditional Prussian militarist rises, dreaming of restoring the Kaiser's iron fist. A Germany focused on military might, but perhaps lacking the same genocidal ideology. Or maybe the void is filled by a different kind of populist. One focused on the crushing economic injustice, the plight of the working class. A leader less consumed by racial fantasy, more by class struggle. A different authoritarian path, perhaps less outwardly aggressive, but still suppressing dissent. And what of the left? The communists, brutally suppressed in our timeline, are a potent force. With the Nazi boot absent, could they capitalize on the widespread discontent? A Soviet Germany? The thought sends shivers down the spine of Western Europe. A red tide potentially engulfing the continent. This is perhaps the most profound, the most emotionally resonant divergence. Without Hitler's fanatical, state-driven anti-Semitism, the systematic industrial-scale murder of 6 million Jews almost certainly does not occur. The machinery of the death camps is never built. This doesn't erase anti-Semitism, a dark stain on European history long before Hitler. But the sheer scale, the cold, bureaucratic efficiency of the Holocaust was uniquely Nazi. Without that specific engine of hate, millions of lives are spared, families endure, communities thrive. The trauma that has echoed through generations, shaping global Jewish identity and the very landscape of the Middle East, is absent. The world is spared an atrocity that fundamentally altered its moral compass. A different, perhaps lighter shadow falls upon the human story. Would the world still plunge into a second global war? The ingredients for conflict remain: nationalism, colonial ambitions, economic rivalry. A war might erupt, but its shape, its players, its sheer terrifying totality might be utterly different. Perhaps a geopolitical struggle between a resurgent Germany, under a different regime, and the Soviet Union over Eastern Europe. A brutal ideological clash, but without the racial element of the Eastern Front we know. Or maybe the flashpoint is colonial. European powers, still clinging to empires, clash over resources or influence in Africa or Asia. A brutal, localized war, perhaps, but not the all-consuming conflagration of 1939 to 1945. World War II was a brutal accelerator of technology. Jet engines, radar, penicillin, the atomic bomb, born from the desperate urgency of total war. Without that crucible, progress might slow in some areas but surge in others. Imagine resources diverted from military research into civilian applications, faster advancements in medicine, transportation, communication. Perhaps the space race begins earlier, driven by scientific curiosity rather than ideological rivalry. A world without the bomb, but perhaps with other unimagined technological marvels or horrors. In our timeline, World War II catapulted the United States to superpower status. It ended the Great Depression, fueled industrial might, and solidified America's global leadership. Without that war, America's rise might be slower, more uncertain. The Great Depression could linger. The New Deal's impact might be different. America might remain more isolationist, less inclined to police the world. Its cultural influence might still spread, but its political and military footprint would be significantly smaller. World War II devastated the Soviet Union, but also cemented Stalin's power and the USSR's global standing. Without the existential threat of Nazi invasion, Stalin's purges might be less intense, driven by internal paranoia rather than wartime fear. The Soviet economy, spared the horrific destruction, might be stronger. Competition with the West could take a different form. However, without the unifying force of the Great Patriotic War, internal ethnic and political tensions might surface earlier, potentially leading to a different, perhaps earlier, fragmentation of the Soviet Empire. The modern Middle East was largely forged in the fires of World War II's aftermath. The decline of European empires, the rise of Arab nationalism, the complex path to the creation of Israel. Without the war, this landscape is unrecognizable. Colonial powers might cling on longer. The impetus and context for the creation of Israel, so tied to the Holocaust and post-war displacement, would be fundamentally altered. The rise of various political and religious movements might follow entirely different trajectories. The European Union, born from the ashes of war, was a desperate attempt to prevent future conflict. Without World War II, the driving force for integration might be weaker. Yet the economic logic, the desire for stability, could still push nations together. Perhaps a less ambitious, more gradual form of European cooperation emerges earlier. A customs union, a loose confederation. It might lack the deep integration of the EU we know, but it could lay the groundwork for a more unified continent decades ahead of schedule. The atomic bomb, the ultimate terror born directly from the race against Nazi Germany. Without that specific fear, the Manhattan Project might never have received the colossal resources it needed. Nuclear weapons might simply not exist. Imagine a Cold War fought without the constant existential dread of nuclear annihilation. A world where proxy wars and ideological battles are the norm, but the ultimate button is absent. A safer world? Or one where conventional conflicts become even more devastating? Predicting the full scope of this divergence is impossible. The butterfly effect is a chaotic force. A small change here ripples outwards, amplifying in unpredictable ways. Seemingly minor figures or events could gain monumental importance in this new timeline. Perhaps a different, equally or even more dangerous ideology takes root. Maybe a different, more cunning dictator rises, one who avoids Hitler's mistakes and achieves even greater, more terrifying power. The potential for darkness, sadly, is not limited to one man. It's comforting to think a world without Hitler is automatically better. But history teaches us caution. Power vacuums are rarely filled by angels. The underlying resentments, the economic pressures, the nationalist fervor, these forces remain. Could a different form of totalitarianism emerge? One based on class, or political ideology, or something else entirely? Could the absence of the Holocaust mean a different group becomes the target of state-sponsored hatred? The potential for human cruelty is a chilling constant. So the ledger of this phantom history. On one side, the immeasurable blessing of no Holocaust, millions of lives saved, a world spared that specific, profound evil, perhaps a less destructive 20th century overall. On the other, the terrifying uncertainty. A different war, perhaps equally brutal. The rise of other unknown tyrannies. A world less prepared for future challenges because it didn't face the specific crucible of World War II. It's a thought experiment that chills as much as it offers hope. How would our world be different today? The geopolitical map would be redrawn. Alliances we take for granted wouldn't exist. Nations might have different borders, different forms of government. Our technology, our culture, our collective memory, all fundamentally altered. We might not live under the nuclear sword, but perhaps face other, unimagined threats. Our understanding of good and evil, shaped so profoundly by the Nazi era, would be different. Regardless of what might have been, the lessons of our history endure. The rise of Hitler wasn't inevitable, but a confluence of factors, choices, and failures. Vigilance against extremism, intolerance, and the seductive call of scapegoating remains paramount. We must remember the fragility of democracy, the ease with which hate can take root, the vital importance of empathy and critical thought. History, even alternate history, is a mirror reflecting our potential for both creation and destruction. So there it is, Alternatifyers. A journey into a world hinged on a single fatal moment in 1916. A world without Hitler, but not necessarily a paradise. It reminds us how precarious our reality is, how dependent on chance, choice, and the complex interplay of human forces. Would it have been better, worse, or just different? A chilling, thought-provoking question. What other ghosts of history haunt your imagination? What other single moments could have shattered our timeline? Let me know your deepest thoughts, your wildest speculations, your emotional reactions in the comments below. This is a massive topic, and I want to hear your theories. If this dive into the phantom past resonated with you, hit that like button. And for more explorations of history's road not taken, subscribe to Alternatify. Your support helps us keep exploring these fascinating possibilities. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Stay curious, stay critical, stay alternatifying.